Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Gil Podcast. This podcast is about me, Gil, and the things that I'm currently obsessed with. If you've been listening for the past couple of weeks, you've noticed I kind of stopped doing that intro. And somebody asked me, hey, why'd you stop doing that intro? Well, I kind of got comfortable with the premise and the idea of the podcast. And like I said before, this podcast intro is a mantra and a reminder for me as to why I'm doing this and what this podcast is essentially about. Things that I'm thinking about, things that I'm currently obsessed with. Because it's so easy to get bogged down into talking about or being forced to talk about things that I essentially don't care about. Not Sharon or Daquan. This is my podcast, and I had to remind myself that. So that's why I brought back the intro. All right, without further ado, let's get into today's topic, and that is podcasting. All right, so like I said, this episode is going to be about podcasting, and essentially with this podcast, to me, it's successful. The conversation that this podcast has garnished outside of my home studio or my actual podcasting studio have been extremely rewarding. I have been getting the results that I wanted to get, which is intellectual, deep thought after my podcast, critiquing my podcast in a way that can make it better and ultimately make conversations with people who listen to my podcast better. This is an open dialogue. And I like to remind people that this is, of course, things that I'm thinking about, but ultimately, I'm making it as a conversation piece for other people as well. And I like to get an idea, even though I like to say this is the Gil Podcast, I like to get an idea what my listeners want to know about, what they want to learn about, because this is also a learning experience as well. I'm always teaching like that. That's just me in general. I love to teach. So in this episode, I really want to talk about how to produce a podcast, how to create a podcast, essentially how to start a podcast production company and make money podcasting, or make money podcasting for other people, or essentially just make money with the medium that is the infamous podcast. All right, so let's start with this first. What is a podcast? A lot of people don't realize that the word podcast is actually a combination of the word iPod and broadcast together. Like that's a thing. A lot of people don't even realize that. And podcasting itself it's old. I believe it's kind of was coined like in 2007, maybe. I'm not sure. Well, I know when the iPod came out, podcast was like a part of it. So I think the term is probably a lot older than that. Maybe, but podcast is essentially a digital file made available on the internet for downloading to a computer or a mobile device. Typically, podcasts are available in series, and you can find them anywhere. Now, the issue is that right now, a lot of people are putting podcasts on YouTube. And yeah, there could be a video podcast, but typically, podcasts aren't normally videos, because in my personal opinion, because I'm an old podcast head, I respect the game. I respect the culture. If your podcast doesn't have an RSS feed, to me, it's not a podcast. You should be able to have an RSS feed so that's just me. Then again, I'm different and times are changing. But in order for me to consider something a podcast, I have to be able to retrieve the episodes in an RSS feed format to any device. Now you're asking yourself like, hey Gil, so like what's an RSS feed? You've probably seen it. You've probably seen the picture of it. It's like a Wi-Fi symbol, like an orange little Wi-Fi symbol. And RSS feed essentially stands for Rich Site Summary. And what an RSS feed is like the address to your audio file, and somebody's device can like tap into it. Like they just type in your website's address for that episode. And anytime you make a new episode, it will essentially get updated. Like, I'm going to give y'all the exact definition because I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm saying, but I know what an RSS feed is. It's kind of like hard to explain it. So an RSS feed is a web feed that allows users and an application to access updates to a website in a standardized computerized format. So it'll be episode 1, 2, then subsequently 3, and you can have a description, you can have photos, and within that post or within that feed, you're able to provide a photo, video, audio file for your podcast. And the beautiful thing about RSS feed is that it's open to the internet. It's open to everybody. There's no blockade. You don't have XM radio. You don't have Spotify Pro, whatever that thing is called. No, anybody can access your podcast as long as you have an RSS feed. If they have iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, as long as there's an internet connection, you can access somebody's podcast. That's the beautiful thing. So to me personally, if you really want to take this, especially if you're trying to produce podcasts for clients on a high end, you have to be able to have an RSS feed for your clients and or your podcast. All right. So let's just start way back in the beginning. And this is essentially for anybody who wants to start a podcast for yourself or your clients. What services I suggest to use? To me, it's all about making it simple. Now, for me personally, I used to use SoundCloud way back in the day, like 2015, like 2016, early 2016. Don't do that. It's all about making it easy for your listeners to tap into your podcast anywhere. And especially if you're having paying clients come in and you're producing podcasts for them, and the agreement is for you to have their podcast distributed on every podcast platform, you have to be able to create an RSS feed so that their auntie in, Ukraine can actually listen to the podcast in the bunker or something like that. Like, you have to be able to have the podcast available. All right, so now we got that out the way. You have to create your RSS feed. Now, the podcast distribution services, like as far as like what websites would you use to have your podcast distributed? What I use is Anchor. Sometimes I'm slowly moving away from Anchor simply because I've had a lot of issues and I haven't heard people talk about this. I've had issues where I try to load Anchor.fm and it wouldn't load. I've had issues scheduling the podcast and the episode's not coming out the time that they're supposed to. I've had issues where I would have it uploading an episode, and I like to have the highest quality for my clients as possible. So I'm uploading a file and it's taking forever. Not because of my internet speed, but because Anchor's website decided to, stop uploading the podcast episode. So then these episodes end up becoming really, really late. No, and this is like 2 or 3 times randomly. But Anchor is fun. I actually love using Anchor. It's essentially the best method to get your podcast and voice out there. So don't think that I don't use Anchor. I use Anchor all the time, even for some of my paid clients, like my big top ticket clients. I use Anchor. Trust me, I use Anchor. Use Anchor if you want to start podcasting with like little to no. Actually, it's free, so you're not going to be spending any money. So if you want to just start a podcast for yourself or your client, just use Anchor. Now, if you want to take it a little bit further, and for some of my clients, I actually use Buzzsprout. And one of my good friends, Tom Buck, he's a YouTuber podcaster. He actually has a podcast course called the Podcaster Playbook, and he has a bunch of little programs about how to essentially make your podcasting better. He has an affiliate link for Buzzsprout, and I had signed up. So every time I get a client who signs up for Buzzsprout, I think I just had 2, I would use his affiliate link to support him in that way. and it's pretty dope. So Buzzsprout is pretty much Anchor, but with a little bit more features. I feel like Buzzsprout is kind of enables you to be a little bit more creative. I just don't like the website format and the look. Just looks a little outdated, but they have a lot of cool features. Like you can actually download the audio wave preview. So when you upload your episode, they give you like that audio wave stuff as if you're talking. Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is a great show about cars and their loud exhaust system. And then you're showing the audio wave. Tune in to 103.5 The Beat. And, it'll show you that audio wave moving, and you can post it on your Instagram stories, and people would be like, oh, wow, he got words moving. That's supposed to entice people to listen to your show. I get it, but at the same, I remember I had a client who was like, yo, I need those audio waves. I'm like, okay, cool. I can, we could do that. I can produce that video for you for Instagram. And, he paid me to upload it to his Instagram. And I made the video. And he has maybe 20 subscribers or 20 followers. And so who are these 20 people? And I go on his follower list, and it's just random ghost pages, like random pages that don't have anything on them. It's just like, why are you doing this? It's all about, for me, scaling up. You can start on Anchor, which is free, or you don't have to start on Anchor. You can start on Spotify, not Spotify. You can start on YouTube, maybe not even have your podcast distributed via an RSS feed, and then scale up. You don't have to do everything right now. So a lot of people are saying, just get the highest, most expensive equipment, most expensive software, and then you be at the top. No, start at the bottom, build your base, build your community. That's if you're starting a podcast. I say start with something that you can, all right, I'm not going to lie here. As far as software goes, you don't have to spend any money. As far as distribution services go, you don't have to spend any money. So I say start with Anchor, which is free, or start with YouTube. Now let's get into the hardware section, because I think I divulged enough about the importance of, the software and the distribution services. Well, I didn't get into the software. I just spoke about Anchor and Buzzsprout, which is Buzzsprout, you have to pay things like $12 a month. Anchor is free. So do it with that information what you will. There are a bunch of other podcast distributors. I don't really use them. These are the ones that I use and I have experience with. And I'm not going to tell you to go to podcastriverbeach.com because they paid me to. No, I don't know them. I don't use them. So I use Anchor and I use Buzzsprout. That's it. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about how recording a podcast, audio and video works, especially when you're using different types of hardware. Now, right now, I'm speaking into my Shure SM7B microphone. It's a great microphone. I've always wanted one, and I have several of these, and it feels good. It feels good to have a product or a tool, I like to call these tools, that you want and you can get. Now, this microphone is quite literally useless unless you have a few other, what's the word I'm looking for? A few other tools to make it work. Like you need a signal booster. Then you need a mixer because you have to be able to send this audio somewhere. And back in the day, you would have to send this to something. But now with the Rodecaster Pro, you can record on there via a micro SD card and connect it via USB-C to my laptop. And I'm recording into my laptop right now. So the process goes like this. I have my microphone, connects to my Rodecaster Pro with an XLR cable. My Rodecaster Pro then is powered on. I check the levels, make sure I'm not too loud, maybe not too low. Then I connect my USB-C cable from the back of my Rodecaster Pro into my laptop. Now with my laptop, I have an app called Audacity, which is free. I've been using Audacity for free since the early 2000s. It's an app. It's on Windows. It's on Mac. It's great. You can do a lot with it. And then all I'm doing right now is just recording with Audacity. I hit record on Audacity and I'm recording. Now you are podcasting. So the beautiful thing is the Rodecaster Pro has the ability to use USB to my laptop. And there are other mixers. Like my first mixer that I ever bought was the Xenix Q802 USB. It's a Behringer mixer. It has 2 XLR inputs and it has tons of like cool EQ effects. The beautiful thing is that it's XLR and you can connect it to your computer. All right. So next I have my Yamaha MG10XU, which is another USB XLR microphone. A mixer. And that one is a 4 XLR input. So the thing is, when I started podcasting a while ago, I would use my Behringer mixer, just had 2 XLR inputs for 2 people. And it was great because I just had one co-host, and we stopped doing that podcast. And then I kind of got into podcast production. That was like 2017. So I started producing podcasts for people. And I started realizing that everybody had more than one guest. Sometimes they didn't have just one co-host. They had like, 2 or 3. So what I ended up doing was investing into a Yamaha MG10XU. It is a 2-channel mixer. It has 4 XLR inputs. And so essentially I was able to have 4 people on the microphone, which was great. There's more people talking. And this one had a lot more effects. Like you can change your voice. You can do a lot of cool different little tricks. And it had USB out and in, I believe. And it had a lot of cool stuff. It's a very powerful tool. So basically this one kind of went for, I think it was like $200. That was the one for 4 channels. So 4 microphones can go in. That one's like it's like $200, I remember, I think. And then my Behringer Q802 USB, which has 2 microphone inputs, went for like $60 to $80, I believe, somewhere in between there. And it's a really small mixer, but you're able to have 2 people on the microphone, which is great, connected to your computer, and then start podcasting. Now, the one that I'm currently using right now is obviously a lot better, and you get what you pay for. This one goes for $600. It is a Rodecaster Pro. It has 4 XLR inputs, USB in and out. It has a TRRS input for your phone, and it has Bluetooth. So you're able to connect your phone to it wirelessly. You have 5 headphone jacks, so you can monitor your audio. If you have 4 people on the podcast talking on a mic, you can monitor. They each can monitor their voice, and as a producer, you can monitor everybody else's voice. It has an extra jack in the front. It has 8 programmable pads that you can have different sound effects. It's really powerful. I mean, it's really great. I mean, I could show you something like right now. Let's see if I can. I can have like different sound effects like that, and it's great. I highly recommend. I highly recommend investing in yourself when you want to start a project. Find the best thing that makes sense for you, and if you feel like it's a great investment, I say jump into it. Now, this is a really expensive setup right here for me. The Rodecaster Pro is $600, and the Shure SM7 microphone, I think it goes for like $300 to $400. Is it $400? Yeah, $400. So that's really expensive. But what ends up happening, I'm able to make sense of it by producing other people's podcasts, and the products kind of paid for themselves in that way. And that's just always my motto. If I ever buy anything, I know it might sound toxic, but I have to figure out a way to make the money back as fast as possible. And I try to make it make sense for me so it can be like on a routine or like a momentum. So I have people coming into my studio to record their podcasts, and basically I'm making money by having high quality equipment that people know and trust. And I feel good that the product is not going to fail. I can't tell you how many times I would be doing a podcast with my old equipment. I used to have people come into my house and I'll be recording with my Behringer. And then just for some reason, like the mics will go bad. I had a cheap microphone, the Pyle microphone, Pyle, that would just break and fall. I had cheap XLR cables that if you store them and like made sure they were neatly, tight, not tightened, but like, wind up for storage, they would just break internally. So then I've had a podcast where I had a young woman talking very, very smart conversation. And the whole time, like maybe like 10 minutes into the podcast, her microphone just said, "Oh yeah, I'm out." And it just stopped working. Actually, not only did it stop working, but the way my setup was, they were all on the same channel. So there was a scary screeching sound that the microphone was making, and it blocked out everybody else's audio, because at the time I was recording everybody on one channel, because that's what I had. I had a mixer that only allowed me to record on one track. So her voice thing is screaming, so you can't hear anybody else, which sucked. So it's all about having the right tool for the job. And going back to what I was saying, how I subsidize for that is by charging people to use my equipment in their own podcasts. But let's say that's not your goal. Let's say you don't want to produce podcasts for people. You can do ad reads. You can sign up with Anchor, and as soon as you get listenership, you're getting people to like download your podcast. Anchor will then qualify you. Anchor will qualify you to start reading ads, start promoting Anchor. Now, you can start getting paid for your podcast immediately, and by finding sponsors. There are sponsors everywhere. Like anybody could be a sponsor. A local business, somebody who owns a trucking company, somebody who owns a salon. And if you want to get your podcast out there, hey, I have an ad spot. I have XYZ amount of listeners and downloads. And do you want to be a sponsor on this week's episode? Or do you want to be a sponsor for the month? That's something that you can essentially do. Like there's so many ways to get sponsored. You don't have to get sponsored by Adidas. There's essentially an Adidas person in your neighborhood. There's somebody who sells shoes. There's a local restaurant that you frequent and that you love. Hey, I really like this place. I have a podcast where I promote stuff. Do you want me to do you want to be a sponsor on this episode and get people to come to your establishment? That's ways you can do that. Also, something that I use a lot, affiliate links. There's so much money to be made. When I tell you about, I think I've made an episode about this before, as far as affiliate links, it's free money. It's money that they're just giving away. It's free money. It's crazy. So sign up for an affiliate program. There's so many out there. Just find one that works for you. Actually, they all work because it's just free money. It works. It's not a scam. I could tell you that Amazon affiliates is an amazing platform. So check it out. Also promoting shows, like having a promo, like, there's any stand-up acts in your neighborhood, if there's any block parties or shows, like get involved. All this involves you moving. This involves you being a part of your community, being a part of something. You know what I can't stand? I can't stand podcasters. I can't stand creatives. I can't stand specific people who want to start an endeavor as far as creating content, having a business, but they don't talk to nobody. You just think you're going to be able to become successful by yourself? Get the fuck out of here. You need to be able to be involved in your neighborhood. You need to sit down and see what's going on. Stop being so fucking selfish and saying, I'm going to start a podcast to be a millionaire for yourself. No, you got the wrong idea, you fucking idiot. You need to be able to sit down and realize what your podcast does for people and then start saying, how can I help them? It's going to sound weird because I basically was saying you go to your local restaurants and promo their establishment. But if you listen to what I said go to a restaurant that you frequent. Don't just pop up to a Bahamian restaurant that you've never been to. Hey, can I get some conch salad? Yeah, man, sure. Hey, I have a podcast and I want to promote your place. We don't know you. What? Get out of here. Like, it's so weird. It's weird how people just assume I'm going to start a YouTube channel and people are going to give me money. No, the fuck they're not, dipshit. This is the most I've cursed on the episode, but it's really irritating. I do consultations frequently. I sit down with people who are like, I'm a content creator. I'm like, cool. Yeah, I'm just going to start my business where I'm going to be editing people's faces and then I'm going to become rich. Great. Do it. Whose faces are you going to edit? Yeah, people are just going to come to me. People are just going to assume that you're the best. Like, you're not in the community. You don't have an Instagram page. And it just boggles my mind when people create a new Instagram page. Everybody should know that I have a business page now. So for you to have any conversations with me, I'm speaking from experience. So this is all me venting. Contact me on my business page only. I'm like, well, I'm here now with you. I can't correspond business on my personal page. Contact me on my business page for any inquiries. What? Dude, like, you're right down the street from me. Like, what are you talking about, dude? I know you. Like, I'm just asking because there's somebody who needs your services. I'll see if you're good for that. And it's just like community first. That's the main thing. And this is a different, I'm tangenting, but this is a different type of conversation. So if you want to start your podcast, if you want to start your YouTube channel, you want to start anything, community. You need to be able to find people who fuck with the thing that you're talking about. That's if it's close to you, if it's far from you. There's an online community, there's Reddit, there's forums online, there's YouTube comments, there's Twitter. Twitter has been amazing for me to be able to see and talk to people who think like me, letting me know that I'm not alone. So find a community of people before you start promoting their services. Try to figure out who these people are first before you ask them for money. Okay, dipshit? Okay. All right. Now, I think I already spoke about this, making money producing podcasts. So me personally, I have a studio space where I charge people by the hour for assisted work and non-assisted work. So basically they come in there, they get to a la carte and choose, hey, I want to shoot for an hour. I want to use one camera angle and I want you to assist me. So I charge a specific amount for the hour, and then I charge them for me standing in and producing their show for them. And if they want me to edit it, that's another charge. So that way everybody gets what they want. I get my time in working. Also, my studio space is occupied, and my client gets their content created and produced well. So, and I have a total podcast package where, hey, if you want all of this, we can just combine everything for you. That way, it's just a simple task, and I just come in, record it for you. But if not, it could be completely unassisted, and it's great. But let's say you don't have a podcast studio. How can you make use of this? Well, there's tons of people's spaces that you can just borrow. Why did I say borrow like that? I read it on my notes and it's borrow, but I said borrow. That's weird. I'm watching too many damn Canadians on YouTube making me say oat. Damn Peter McKinnon. Oh man. Yeah, if you watch a few people on YouTube or if you listen to like people's podcasts, you end up like picking up their lingo or just the way they talk. And I watch Becky and Chris, who are Canadians, Peter McKinnon, a few other people, like consistently. All right, let's get back on track here. So you can rent out somebody's studio space and figure out how much they're charging. So let's say for me, example, for my studios, for my podcasting studio space, it's $60 for the hour, right? So you can come in there and say, hey, Jimmy, there's a studio space that I have available. And this is, all right, so here's what I would do. I would find a client who wants their podcast recorded, and I'll tell them, hey, how's it going? I'm Jimmy, and I can record your podcast for you at a studio, at my studio, because essentially it's your studio for the hour. So you're technically not lying. I've used this before where it's like, hey, I have a studio space available for that hour. Are you available? So I'll tell them, hey, I have a studio space available for that hour. We can record. And if need be, we can do 2 hours just in case we're running out of time. So they'll book me for the 2 hours. So it'll be $120 that I have to pay for the studio space. But what will end up happening is I will charge the client that for the studios. They'll pay the studio space, if not more. They'll pay for my time and travel. They'll pay my time for setting up. And then on top of that, they'll pay for the edit. And then at the end of it, they're like, oh, wow, this was a great experience. Now, the studio space guy is happy. I'm happy. And my clients get their product or service, whatever they needed. So let's say the studio space is $60, right? I will have a setup fee of $50. So $25 to set up and $25 to break down. So plus $50. And so now that's like $110. So basically this client is paying for the studio space. My setup fee is $50. And the breakdowns, my setup fee and breakdown fee is $50 together. Now, as far as like filming, I have to rent out my equipment. So my A7C, I like to charge it for $50 for that day. And my editing is my producing is $75 for an hour. So that's $235. And now the editing, if they want it, depending on what I have to do, I'll just charge $100. So now we're looking at $335, but just to like make it super simple, I'll probably just charge them $300 for that and be done with it. Now my client is getting for $300 for one episode, my time, my high quality equipment, lighting, and a studio space. Now the beautiful thing is they're not aware that this is not my studio space. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is your studio space." Yeah, for the hour. Man, if it was a 2-hour setup, so it'll be 2 hours, it'll be $400 or $395. That's super, super dope. That's my thinking of that. But since basically I have my own studio space, they're still paying me they're still renting out the studio space. And this is why I have a whole complete package where, hey, if you want me to do everything for you, it's actually cheaper to do my whole complete package, which is $250, where it's just 1 hour and I direct and produce the podcast for you. And you get the audio file. It's great. So, and it's super simple, but you have to have your system and processes in there. And if you want to listen back, you can go ahead and do that. And if you have any advice, hey, let me know, because I want to make more money. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's so many different ways to do it, and I'm pretty sure you probably found, a hole in that logic, or you probably said, hey, you could probably add this, add that. I want to go back up and talk about video, because video podcasts are huge. A lot of people are having, YouTube channels turn into like 100,000 subscribers overnight by just having interesting topics that people want to hear. So things you might need for a video setup essentially is basically a video switcher. I personally use the ATEM, the Blackmagic ATEM Mini. It is a 4 HDMI input that allows you to connect 4 cameras and have different angles, and you can switch between them. And another important tool, just by having that is important, because the ATEM Mini connects to your computer. It's great, but not only that, you would need a software to help you go live and help you, have people see your content if it's on YouTube or whatever. I use Ecamm. There's going to be a link in the description for Ecamm, so you can check it out if you're interested. I use Ecamm all the time professionally. This probably is an ad or promotion for Ecamm, just letting you know, because I love it. There's probably not one software Final Cut Pro is great, but Ecamm Live is probably one of those things where it was like, I saw everybody using it and I was rolling my eyes like, get out of here. I'm tired of that. Can you stop talking about that? And then I finally got it. I got it at a really, really, really good rate. And I started using it and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I see what they're talking about. So Ecamm Live is great because it allows you to have like a broadcast look. Like you can, if you've seen anybody do some dope live stuff where they have people on their live and it shows their names and all these really cool graphics and stuff, that's most likely Ecamm Live. So Ecamm Live is great. Can't say enough good things about it, but it's really up to you how you want to use the software, how you want to use your microphone setup. And like I said, start small. Start with a easy, especially if you want to do podcast production, start with like a 2 XLR input, start with just doing solo podcasts or just one co-host podcast, and then scale up from there and get a 4. But if you can, I just say, get the best thing, man. Like, it's going to hurt. But $600 because, all right, let's do the math. I spent about $80 on my not HDMI, but 2 XLR input Behringer. And then I spent $300 on my Yamaha 4 XLR input. So in between that, plus the microphones, plus the cables, I spent over $600 already, because I had to buy a few other microphones that just failed, dealing with the headache and the turmoil and embarrassment, instead of just investing in well, then again, the Rodecaster Pro didn't come out around the time that I bought these, but it would have been really nice to have the Rodecaster Pro. Trust me. All right. Can't really think of anything else other than just start. Just do it. I've dropped so much information. It's getting pretty late here. It's like 12:30 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, my brain is shutting down. All right, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for the next one. I will be adding a lot of the information in the links in the description, so keep a lookout for that. Oh, I forgot to add one more topic about producing podcasts for clients on a bigger scale. I have 2 projects now currently that I'm doing for my clients, and this requires a team of people, writers, assistants, and producer, marketing team. And for this podcast, it's a little bit higher. This is where I have like a podcast contract, And if you want more information about that, like, we can probably get on a consultation call and discuss it. But I literally forgot. But these podcast numbers, they're a little bit higher. And essentially what these clients get is audio, video, promotion. They quite literally just come into the studio, record their podcast, in and out. And it's really, really powerful. And I feel like this is what a lot of people might want, but you have to be able to have the right tools, the equipment, and the team in order to get this type of client. And actually, I'm restructuring now. It's so many other moving parts, so I have to make it make sense for me. But yeah, I just wanted to leave y'all with that, just to give y'all more information, because podcasting, there's a lot of money in podcasting. A lot of money in podcasting. You just have to know how it looks. And I just wanted to let y'all know and be extremely transparent with y'all as far as how's that going with me. All right, guys. Love you guys so much. Thanks for listening. And be sure to share this episode. Like, just do me a favor and just share it with somebody. Hey, man, my boy was talking about podcasting on this episode. He also talks about relationships, and just, you know what I'm saying? Like, share this with somebody. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Peace.